Well, schools in Kenya reopened today, Monday, the 12th of October, starting with grade 4, class 8 and form 4. The closure of schools in March this year due to COVID-19 pandemic interrupted learning for over 17 million students who missed more than 6 months of formal education. Education Cabinet Secretary George Magoha announced the reopening of schools last week, ending what had earlier been termed as a dead year. Those expected to report on Monday are those in transitional classes, but the Kenyan government plans to eventually have everyone in school by the 2nd of November. Schools will be expected to put in place measures to prevent the spread of COVID-19, including checking temperature and installing hand washing basins. Let's speak now to our colleague Sarah Kimani, who is watching activity as the schools start to reopen. Sarah, a very good morning to you. Did the trend of countries relaxing their lockdown restrictions influence the turnaround of the Education Secretary's decision to reopen schools in Kenya?
Yes, indeed, an almost 360-degree turnaround. And so the inflow of children into the schools has been very slow. We're in one of the schools in a place called Kajiado County. We were here just before the break time ended, but it has now ended. And behind me are the classrooms. What we noticed is that the classes are still very empty. A few of the pupils have come. And interestingly, those who have come at least have their masks on, although maybe not properly put on. One of the other things that you find when you come here is that the kids are supposed to wash their hands. We did not see the checks of temperatures, but those are just some of the rules that they're supposed to adhere to. A lot of the parents that we spoke to earlier before getting here saying that it is difficult for them to bring their children to school immediately, because even though public primary and public secondary schools are free, they are still expected to buy uniforms, they are still expected to buy provisions like books and pens, and most of them have lost either their jobs or their livelihoods during the COVID-19 lockdown period. And so for now, they may not be able to adhere to these new regulations that have been brought forward by the Minister of Education, or what we call here the Cabinet Secretary of Education.
Yeah. So you say the children are only trickling in. Do we know what the current societal fears are now that we're in a place where we've learned about what we can do to prevent the spread of COVID-19?
Well, a lot of parents first have no money, but others it's a wait-and-see situation. And so they want to see, have the schools, have the government put in place proper measures to be able to protect their children. Because remember, even though the government has reopened the economy here in Kenya, the numbers have started rising. We are seeing now the country's tally standing at about 40,000, up from about 38,000 when the government announced that it was going to reopen. So at least 2,000 people in the last 2 weeks have contracted the disease. So a lot of parents worry that maybe the government should have just kept its earlier word of saying that schools will reopen in January. But also in other areas, parents are looking for schools because their children are in private schools, and these private schools have either closed or they switched business completely. They are no longer schools. They are chicken farms, they are vegetable farms, and so this week most of them will now be looking for alternatives for their children.
Yeah. Well, it's an important milestone in the opening up of countries around the continent and indeed around the world. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Sarah Kimani.
Thank you for having me.
Sarah Kimani there talking to us about the reopening of Kenyan schools.